Okay, with that being said, I already know one person in our audience, so thanks for being here. And yeah, I guess we can get this talk underway. Hopefully, we'll see more people joining the session. For those of you that are not familiar with our YouTube channel, you could always follow us on YouTube. If you go to the About Us channel, there'll be a link to YouTube there. And for those of us that are kind of joining into this session, just as a reminder, just to remain on mute for our talker or our speaker to speak. And then after they're done their talk, we could do Q&A and you could unmute your mics to ask questions. Okay? So just give us a thumbs up if you could hear us, see us. I'm not on webcam, by the way. I'm going to be doing screen recording. So if you could see Julia, just let us know. Just give us a thumbs up in the chat. Yep, we got a thumbs up. Okay, so I'll
All
leave the floor to Julia.
right, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. I do have a short deck, and then we'll have time for Q&A. Do feel free to put questions in the chat as I'm talking, and we'll cover them at the end. This is a more broad discussion, but we're also going to focus at the end on specific questions, and I have a humongous, well, I feel like it's humongous resource list of questions you can ask and questions to practice before you get an interview that I will share with everyone at the end. If people would like, I can also share my deck as well. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so first, a little bit about me, and then I'll talk a little bit about like options, which I'll go very fast because that's not the focus of this. And then a little bit about trends, and then getting that interview and questions. So a little bit about me. I'm really passionate about getting, I'll use the word junior UX designer just because of popularity, although I hate that term because if you're pivoting, I do not feel like you're a junior. You have corporate experience, I would assume, or some kind of work experience. So I don't like to use the word junior, but I'm really passionate about both education and people finding a job within the UX industry. About me, I did not go to art school, and I do not think it's necessary at all for this job. I got a degree in something called human ecology, just because I was looking more for something around sustainability at the time, and that was a really long time ago. Um, and I actually feel like the degree was actually really good for UX without even knowing what UX was at the time. This was back in the 90s. Human ecology is a study of humans and their environment, whether it's man-made or physical or something else like that. So I was really lucky in that regard. And then I was also really lucky in that I started my career in the dot-com bubble in San Francisco. You could practically walk out of college and get a job. It was right when all the craziness started, and I was really lucky in that regard. Um, and then I've had a bit of twists and turns. I was never anyone interested in working my way up the career ladder. And I learned a term in 2018 called career portfolio, which I think fits me much more, where you have, you're curious and you try different things. And I definitely feel like that's what I've done. I've done UX design as an independent, um, an IC, like a employee, contractor, freelance, consulting, for many years. And then past 4 or 5 years, I really focused on education and working at various boot camps. I think I've worked at 14 now. And then I did recruiting for a while because, probably like you, I'm like, what is going on? I turn in my application materials and it's a black hole. What in the world? And so I was super lucky. And I feel a little bad saying this. It's not really hard to get a recruiting job, although I feel so bad with all the layoffs right now for everyone, and recruiters are some of the first hit because the job does not require a whole lot unless you work your way up, um, to a more senior level. But the basic level of recruiting is not very hard to get a job. So also recommend that if you need money. It's a good way to see the other side. It does. I worked at a third party recruiting company, and it does work on I forgot, I'm blanking on the word, but where you get paid by person you place. So that's how third party recruiting works. You get a percentage of what the person you place at the job. So it's, oh, commission, that's the word. So you work on commission as a third party recruiter, unlike in house, which we'll talk about, where you get paid a salary. And then my passion is really education for UX specifically, getting people jobs, getting people in the industry. I mean, the only reason I could see I might want to be more senior, I have been a manager, which I do like, but I don't like the politics of being a manager, but I love it so that I could offer jobs to people. But it doesn't always work that way because as a manager, you may not have control over what job openings you can offer. So that's a bit about me. So, what are some options to get into the industry if you haven't done this already? There's the boot camps. You've probably heard of a ton of them. I just want to call out Trilogy was bought by 2U. I know, lovely name. And they do what I call university add ons. I don't know if there's a proper term, but where you see, like, so I taught at like UC Berkeley, and it's like, oh, you get a certificate in UX. It's, 6 months maybe. Some places are 9 months, some places are a year. But they actually didn't come up with the curriculum. It's the same curriculum. I think 2U has 48 universities they partner with as offering a UX boot camp. The university did not come up with the curriculum. Trilogy slash 2U did. And so it's the same even if you have the name of the school on your resume and LinkedIn. So it's just something to keep in mind. There are part time programs, and I think they also offer full time. And then IXDF is Interaction Design Foundation, which is more classes. I put them under here because I had built a boot camp for them. That was one of my jobs. And then they never really launched it. So I guess that needs to go away. Um, Apprenticeships are another good way to get experience if you can. If you're right out of college, you can get like into company, they call funnels of apprenticeships. Ad hoc is companies like Tech Fleet. I work for one called DIA Design Guild. We offer apprenticeships that are not affiliated with a company. There are about 8 to 10 others. If you want a list, I do have that on my blog, which I'll have at the end under resources. I have a lot of career resources for transitioners on my blog. And then, of course, there's continuing education, college courses, Coursera, Udacity, Udemy, Interaction Design Foundation again. CIID is where I work. It's Copenhagen Institute of Interaction Design. They offer a 1 year master's equivalent program, and then they also offer individual courses you can take that are a week long. And they're all over the courses are all over the world. The 1 year program is either in Costa Rica for 8 months and then 2 months in Italy, or swapped where you're 8 months in Italy and 2 months in Costa Rica. And that's a year-long program. All right, so let's get into more hiring trends. Like, how does this process work? All right, so in-house, which means a recruiter who, like you apply to, I'm just going to use the big names, not saying that you should work there or anything, but let's say like Google or Facebook or Amazon, just a company where you're applying directly to them. So you apply, your resume, cover letter if you want to do that. I don't always recommend a cover letter. It really depends, I guess, on how well you tell a story, which is something like I'm not super great at, and so I do it a little differently, and I'll talk about that in a second. So first, if you get in, you get an interview, you first talk with the recruiter who works for the company. So remember, a recruiter's job is the company. You're a product, and are you a product that the company wants? And so that's what the recruiter is trying to figure out. Then, if it all goes well, you talk with the hiring manager. Recruiter conversations, 20 minutes average, 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30. Usually you don't need to show your portfolio or anything. It's some standard questions like your salary requirements, always give a range, always do it higher than you think, especially if you're a woman or a minority. Um, And there's lots of resources out there to find salaries. I like Levels FYI is has it all. It can be a little scary to see what some people make, although those salaries are going down with the layoffs. Then you have a talk with the hiring manager. That can be anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. Once in a while, it can be an hour. Then you might have to show one specific case study. You talk about culture, you talk about what the team is like. Then you might have what we sort of call a panel, or it can be individual, where you talk with a few members of the team you might be working with. If you're working with multiple teams or getting looked at for multiple teams, then it could be up to like 6 or 7 different interviews. And it could be one-on-one or in groups of like 2 to 5 people. Definitely need to do a portfolio review in that part. You walk through 2 to 3 case studies depending on the amount of time you have and what you want to show. Then some places, somewhere in here, you do that design challenge assignment. I personally, push back on that, but if you're less senior, you're probably like, I need a job, so I'll just do what people tell me, but make sure it's not something for the company. If someone says, like, redesign our homepage, to be simple, saying, no, can you please give me a high level challenge? There are plenty of design challenge prompts on the internet. Please pick one of those. It's just look at my thinking process, and it's not intended to be a consultant for you unless you're going to pay me. So it's perfectly valid. Please push back. I'd like to say, everyone, do not ever design something for the company. They're just trying to get free work. And it's perfectly okay to say you want to do the challenge because you want to be considered, but say I want something high level or something not related to the company. There's so many prompts online they can use. And then there are 2 different ways. It's either a take-home assignment, which I really hate. Like, those are the absolute worst, because then you come back and do another review and you have to walk through like you did a case study, and then I'm like, well, I just did a case study portfolio review. Why am I doing another one? Then they also have live design challenges where you actually are doing the design challenge, using FigJam or some other whiteboard tool, and you're doing it with a few people on the specific UX team, or it could be some product managers in there too. And you can ask them questions, which I like because it can show how you think through things. I don't like design challenges because they're very rushed, and usually you only have like the time of the interview or a couple days if it's take home, and real life at work is never like that. You never go through the whole process that fast ever. So it's very not realistic, but what can you do? Then you might talk with some cross-functional team members like product managers and engineers. Marketing could be all different things depending on the role. Researchers, and then if all goes well, you negotiate the offer. Once again, that's usually with the recruiter. So hopefully you gave a range up front. Now you get some more details. And remember, when you negotiate, it's not just your salary. You can negotiate other things such as time off, learning and development budget, some kind of perks or something. Those are all negotiable. And finally, hopefully you accept an offer and have a start date. However, do keep in mind, things have happened, as we've all seen recently. A company can renege on that offer, and you'll be stuck without a job. So I always say, don't count your chickens before they're hatched until you actually start at the company and you have your onboarding, hopefully, and you start your first week. Then it's like, okay, breathe that sigh of relief. So that's if you're applying directly to a company, you get in, you have the in-house process. There's third-party recruiters, which I did. And so these are people not affiliated with a company. They are contracted with multiple different companies. And so maybe you see a job and you're like, oh, I'm going to apply to it. And then, someone from like Creative Circle or 24/7, there's so many of these companies, individual recruiters that also do this as well. So you talk to them, and then they sell you back to the hiring manager of the specific job that maybe you applied to. And then what's good is, since they have other jobs at other companies, they can also maybe sell you to multiple hiring managers. So it can be really useful to get a few third-party recruiters that you build a good relationship with because they can really help you out. Then the process is pretty much the same as it is with an in-house thing. The recruiter does the negotiation with you after having or for you most of the time, after having a conversation with you on what you're looking for. And then you accept the offer, sign the offer, and start. Same thing. Don't breathe that sigh of relief until you've been there your first week. So that's how that process goes. As I said, it's really good to have a third party recruiter or three in your pocket, as in, like, you have a good relationship with them, and they can work for a big company such as Robert Half, Creative Circle, 24/7, or they can be more independent. So then you can also, apply for a full-time role. I personally hate that term, but let's say employee is actually the proper term versus a contractor. The process is shorter if you're a contractor. The interview process is usually shorter. You might just have recruiter, hiring manager, and one person on the team, and that's it. You still would have a portfolio review, but usually you don't have any design challenges or anything like that. I personally like what is called contract to hire. So you start as a contractor because then I can sort of test out the company and see if I like it. Not all companies offer that. It's something I ask about. But it's just sort of see if you both fit, and then you can sort of leave if the contract is over once you're like, this isn't working, or you can stay as become a full-time employee. Contractor does not have benefits. You're paid by the hour or by the project. And then your length of contract can be anywhere from like a month to a year. They can, end, and then you can continue and extend that contract. But you do have to pay self-employment tax in the US, and you have to pay obviously for your own benefits such as healthcare. So that's something where you want to ask for a higher hourly rate than you may ask for a salary because you have to pay for those things yourself. You can also, I'm not going to go into detail here, but make your own LLC, like your own independent little company. And then if you do that, you need business insurance, and there's some other things that you need to pay for. So it's something to think about if you want to be a long-term contractor. All right, so some trends. If you're in UX design, you must absolutely 100,000% have a portfolio, whether it's online or like a PDF or something you do in Figma. It's a little bit up for debate. My thought is have an online portfolio, and then I also have a PDF portfolio that I show when I'm in the interview process. So I never show my online portfolio when I'm in the interview process. Your online portfolio is like a marketing tool. It's more broad. You might have different projects. Once you get into the interview process, your case studies are more specific, targeted to that company, hopefully, or that industry. So you can show like you know how to solve those problems. So I always believe you should have an online portfolio. There's tons and tons of tools out there to make it much simpler. And no one really cares about what platform you use, whether it's Squarespace or whatever. It's telling a good story and having a good case study matters way more than whatever platform you use. UX research, it's not required to have a portfolio. Some hiring managers ask for it. Once again, it's just to see your past work. So it might not be laid out or have the same style of case study as a UX design portfolio, but it's just how is the work you've done before. I'm not going to go into portfolio specifics such as NDAs or laying out a case study. This is more about the interview process, but I want to give a little context before we get in there and the Q&A. All right, so places to find jobs, LinkedIn. It's popular. I don't love it. I feel like the filters could be a lot better. They are doing some AI in the background that's making it a little better in some ways. I'm sure you've all seen like, oh, 500 people applied for this role. Remember, that's not actual applications. It's how many people clicked the apply button. Some other job boards. These are, of course, by no means all of them at all. Indeed, I really like one called True Up because they have way better filters. Ada is another one I like because you do, instead of, I mean, you upload your resume, but you also do a video of yourself and like what you're interested in, a little bit like 3-minute video, like introducing yourself. And then if you're like, I am going to work remotely no matter what, we work remotely is a really good option. There are other fully remote job boards and filters on other job boards for that, but that only has remote jobs, so that can be good. Slack groups and obviously some Discord groups are a good place to find jobs that people post. These third party recruiters, staffing companies such as like Robert Half, again, and there's plenty of other ones. Just look for those. They just have tons of jobs, and you can search their website before applying. Then you talk to a recruiter and sort of see what might work for you. And then, of course, networking. Networking is not a silver bullet and it takes the longest out of all of these. Networking takes time. Start doing it now if you're not doing it. It can be scary. I'm shy, believe it or not, and I still hate it. It makes me feel yucky, and I hate the word network. Instead of network, think, I want to build a relationship with this person. How do I do that? All right, so standing out, I just want to go high level. Do not include, I did a 6-week project. This project was 1 month. This project was 3 weeks, 2 weeks. That's not necessary in your case study. If someone asks, of course, tell them. But saying it right up front shows you have very little experience unless you have been on a huge project at a company. But if they're coming out of a boot camp or self study, it just makes you seem really junior. So why are you shouting it to on your marketing materials that you're super junior? Um, some of these other things, really important. Show me why you did something. This can be really hard if you're coming out of a boot camp because the curriculum dictates what you're going to put in your portfolio. I personally can recognize which boot camp you went to based on your case study because they are all the same. So just really show why you did something and your thought process. That matters way more than anything else in your case study. So why did you do usability testing? Not why someone told you to do it, but like how is it going to help you be a better design? Like why did you do that? Why did you create a persona? Why did you create an empathy map? Make sure to have all these things. The skills, honestly, fill them out, but don't expect them to be a magic bullet at all. Your headline is probably, in your experience, are the two most important things. When a recruiter is using the recruiter version of LinkedIn, the first thing that shows is your headline. That's what they see first. So try and make it, interesting, have a hook, but not generic. Like the amount of times I just see UX designer and there's over 1 million UX designers on LinkedIn, that's not going to make me click on your headline or your profile. So try and be a little more interesting. There's some formulas floating around. Go ahead and take a look and experiment and try some different ideas. All right, networking, be focused. Think about building a relationship and having a goal. And then the thing about networking is this repeated actions. This is not connect to someone on LinkedIn and be like, okay, I networked, I'm done. When you do connect with someone, make sure to include a note, then follow up with that person. Why did you connect with that person in the first place? They said something interesting. Is that why you did it? Try following people first and getting a sense of what they're like and then connect with them. And then, maybe have a chat. Maybe find them on other social media. Maybe find them on a mentoring platform and then just keep repeating some actions of checking in with them, asking a question about something, just one question, not 50 like some boot camps have you do. And you just build that relationship over time. Sorry, I think I just hit the back button. All right, now we're getting to the meat of things, interviewing. What is going on here? So you have a couple different interviews, as we talked about. You have the interview with the recruiter, you have the interview with the hiring manager, and then you have interviews with cross team members. So for each type of the interview or person you're interviewing with, you need to have a goal. Why are you interviewing these people? It can be the same goal every time for, the recruiter is getting you to the hiring manager. And how are you going to do that? Remember the tell me about yourself, that number one question is really your quick pitch. It's not your life story. It's not where you were born. It's not where you went to college, unless that's a very recent activity or you did that and you want to talk about it specifically as it relates to the job. However, it's a quick pitch, 30 to 60 seconds of why they should be talking to you. That's what tell me about yourself really is. All right. Remember, it's a conversation, not an interrogation. So that means active listening, being yourself, being authentic. Um, it's okay to talk to a recruiter and realize maybe this job really isn't something I'm interested in. I know it's scary. You're like, I'm looking for a job. Shut up, Julia. Just like, I want a job. But do you want a job where you're going to be miserable? Or, if you need a paycheck, there's other things you can do. I actually read this great post recently that said someone got a substitute teacher job while they were looking for a role, and said like they actually really enjoyed it. I mean, they still kept looking. They were looking for a marketing sales job or something, but they actually really enjoyed it, and it was a good way to get some extra money. So look at other ways to make money so you're not in panic mode if possible. I know everyone's circumstances are different and I can't speak for everyone, but just I personally have taken 3 jobs that I thought would be my dream job and I was miserable. Of course, that's just me. You learn about yourself. Um, but we're from the outside, you're like, oh my God, I would love to work for this company. Or I'll see a job description. I'm like, oh my God, that's like 100% me. Like that, like I would love that. But things happen. Maybe you're on a team that you just don't work well or gel with, or maybe it's a manager, or maybe it's a company mission that like sounded good in the job, but then when you get in there, you realize they don't really follow that. And remember, just like you, everyone is usually on their best behavior during an interview. So some of these things you don't know until you get into the job and you actually work with these people on a day-to-day basis, which is one reason I like doing contract to hire. Another thing, when I say this and not an interrogation, it's not question, answer, question, answer. It's, like you would talk to, a mentor or something, or someone maybe you're asking for advice. Like, have an actual conversation where you ask questions about them as a person and not just the job or not just the salary or not just the team. Get to know the person you're talking to a little bit as a person and don't just do question, answer, question, answer. All right, so conversation. Always, always, always say, yes, I have a few questions. If they ask, do you have any questions? I have a huge list of questions you can ask. Um, Remember, when just like good UX research skills, when they answer, your next question should be like a follow up question showing that you are listening and referring to something that they said. Once again, a conversation, not an interrogation. All right, using your user research skills. Be curious about the person interviewing you. All right, and then the final question, and then right after this we'll do Q&A. I went really fast. Um, so even if they don't say, do you have any questions? The amount of time that I've just been like cut off is amazing. But just say, I enjoyed our conversation, learning more about you and the team or the product or the company, whatever you feel comfortable saying and whatever the general flow of the conversation was. After getting to know me a little better, do you have any reservations about me being a fit for this role? The reason you ask this question is it gives you that immediate time to then follow up with any reservations they might have, where you can sell yourself and give reasons why whatever they're concerned about is not needing to be a concern and why you should move on to the next part of the interview process. So it lets you address any issues right away. Sometimes you might not get the opportunity. Follow up in an email. This is where I like to, so as I said earlier about cover letters, I just, honestly, I suck at writing cover letters. I've tried, and, I don't think that always get read. And so then I'm like, why am I spending so much time? But it's a personal choice. So one thing I do is I apply, but then I follow up with the recruiter the next day and be like, oh, I applied. Here's 3 bullet points of why I'm perfect for this job. And then you sort of follow up that way in a sort of finding the hiring manager, following up. I applied. Here are 3 bullet points why I'm perfect, and sort of getting the conversation going before they even hopefully reach out to you for an interview. Get you on their radar. All right. Always take notes if you can during your interview to get better. Or record, use your phone to just record the conversation, depending on what you can do, and learn from your mistakes. Don't worry, don't have to copy this. I have a huge spreadsheet. These are a sample of them, but here are some questions you can ask. And, you don't have time to ask all these. You maybe get time for 3 or 4 questions max. So pick out ones that are really important to you. All right, so I'm not going to go through the resources because you'll get this later. It's all about stuff. So it's time for QA. And with that, I'll stop sharing. And I'd love to hear any questions anyone has.
Feel free
And
to unmute your mics, or you could use the text channel to submit a question.
I see 16 questions in the chat. I'll start there. Oh, yeah, so I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name. I'm terrible at names. So Coyle said recently seeing a lot of offers being rescinded when candidates are negotiating. Yeah, that is scary. So that's one reason why when you're talking to the recruiter up front is you want to give an idea of what you're looking for ahead of time so it doesn't happen in that last stage. I'm not saying that's going to solve all the problems, but that's one reason. Like, even if the recruiter doesn't ask what your salary range is or your salary requirements, tell them so then you can hopefully bypass that horrible feeling of like, so what it really is right now with all these layoffs is there's a couple things going on in the industry. Hopefully you've all noticed that our interest rates here in the United States are very high for us. Um, and so one reason that makes money more expensive. So companies are like, crap, we can't get a loan, we can't get investments as much anymore because money is expensive. Just using a super oversimplified example, it's $2 to get $1 of an investment or a loan. Like, that's not actually true, but I'm just using that as an example. So if it costs you $2 to get $1, you're gonna be like, I am not paying $100,000 for someone right now. I can't afford that because that's a $200,000 out of my budget. So that's one reason why salaries are going down. These crazy tech salaries are no longer going to be as common. Not saying that they're not possible at all, but they're definitely gonna be way less common. Even at the big guys, like, so I keep saying Facebook, but like Meta, I just can't get my head around that name, even though I know it's been like 2 years. Google, Amazon, all of those, because they need to watch their balance sheets, and they're basically losing money now compared to, excuse me, a couple of years ago. So just as Coyle mentions, be very cognizant, try and you can look at Crunchbase or look at stocks and see how the company is sort of doing, and just keep an eye on that. And just once again, don't breathe that sigh of relief till after you've been at the company for a week. Yep, glad to hear that someone else is talking about ADA. Yes, and that's a good reason is about visas. It can have stuff like that. This is being recorded. Small red flags. Ugh, small or large? Sorry. um, so yeah, so some red flags, and it's funny, I just saw someone write a LinkedIn post. They're like, what are the red flags? And I'm like, how long do you have? Like, we need a huge spreadsheet. Maybe I'll add that to the question spreadsheet. Um, when the company says we're like family, and you're like, that sounds awesome. Do you really love everyone in your family? No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. So that usually means there's a lack of boundaries. When people say, oh, we're like family, a family never has to kick someone out in general. Like families, a company can't be a family. They have to let people go sometimes. Being a family is not going to stop that. Um, and it can mean that you do everything together. So one thing I have a really hard time with, and this happened to me at one company that I thought was my dream company, is you're expected to, like, quote unquote, I don't know if I'm showing my age here, drink the Kool-Aid, which means you can't say anything negative about the company, even if it's like in a way that you're trying to give a constructive criticism. It's like a big no-no. Everything has to be super positive. So those are just some examples of why it might not be great to like work at a company that says we're one big happy family. Um, okay, and Ashley, I'll get to your questions in just a second. So that's just one red flag. Maybe I should just do a whole talk on red flags. Oh, speaking of that, I'm glad you brought that question. I'm doing another talk on Thursday with a couple other people, and it's all about hiring. It's me, Laura Klein, Lena Helmsworth, something like that. And I think one other person. They'll be posted on LinkedIn. It might already be already. Let me look at what the company is or how it's like who am I talking with? It's 6:30 Central Time. Oh, Lawrence Humphrey. Sorry, I don't know why I thought it said Lena. Oh, Lena Clark. Okay, Lena Clark, Laura Klein, Lawrence Humphrey, and me. Okay, I'm the only non-L person. But we're really talking about current state of UX and hiring, things like that. Um, oh, it's for an Austin meetup. Okay. I'll see. I'll post it in the resources when I'm done because I can't even tell what this is. Um, yep. All right. See people later. And then I'll ask. Let's see. I just Ashley. Okay. So let's see. Jay. How do you approach interviewing differently if you're trying to sell yourself as a small UX business rather than as an employee? That's a really good question. If you mean small business, like you're offering services like a consultant, is what I'm sort of assuming that's what you're going with. Okay. Yeah. So that's interesting question. And so you don't apply to jobs the same way. Instead, you want to look for people saying, I need this project done. So you don't go to job boards or anything. I'll just give a super simplified example. I have a lot of mentees and I send them to Taproot Foundation or Catch a Fire or Volunteer Match. So these are all volunteer, not actual jobs, but there's similar places you can find, not as many. I only know how to get jobs through networking in that regard. But they say, like, we have this project and we need to get this done. And so in that case, you apply as like more of a business, even though you can apply as a solo individual as well. And the conversation is more like, we offer these services and this is how we can support you, usually like maybe in an ongoing manner, or how our timeline is going to fit into your project. So it's very project based since you're not going to be a full-time employee. So you sell yourself more on like how I can get this project done in the short amount of time in the best possible price for you, is how you sell that a little differently. I hope that answers. And I'm sorry I cannot remember like the project.
Yeah. So this is James. I'm the one who posted the question. Thank you.
Oh, hi
Yeah, you
James.
have it exactly right. So I'm familiar with those, like Catch a Fire, but isn't that strictly like a volunteer organization?
Yeah, I was just using that as an example, but yeah. But the same thing as project based, instead of as an individual going for a salary. So you want to look for, I'm totally blanking. There are places, so like, I'm going to use this, don't kill me. Fiverr and Upwork and Dribble all have projects on them that you can, sell as you can answer as a business. I don't recommend them because you get way outbid by way cheaper people.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, like I said, when I've done more consulting, I've usually gone it through word of mouth. But I do know there are some places, like I'm on some Google groups that have people send out projects. Like one's called Do Good for the Planet or something. And people send out, like, oh, my company needs this project done. And you can, reply and be like, oh, I can offer these services or something like that.
Okay, because what you
So,
said is exactly what I'm trying to do is set up. You know, I'm not I'm not a young person. Starting a career or things like that. I'm very middle aged. I have years of experience. It is a slight pivot for me to go more into UX now, but I'm more interested in just kind of doing my own business, offering
yeah,
services, projects, as opposed to trying to get in the door as an employee. And so I'm just trying to look. That was great just to recommend not going to job boards. Like, so if that's the case, my question then would be, a follow up would be, is there some sort of like LinkedIn just for business owners? I know LinkedIn, of course, has
mhm.
kind of B2B marketing with it, but I just feel like you get lost in such a big world there.
I think there is. That does ring a bell. I'm blanking on what they're called right now, but I've seen them before. And like I said, I've used a Google group before for this. So you can search Google groups. Like I would actually just search, so it's not called a job board. I'll look it up and I will include it in the resources when I'm done.
Sure, great, thank
And
you.
then, yeah, yeah, there definitely is though. There's like these groups, not just Google groups, but like collection of people doing what you're trying to do. Uh,
Excellent, thanks
okay.
so much.
Yeah, no problem. Let's see. Ashley, how would you advise to answer the reserve question so it seems like a response and not a reaction? It's really good. Um, so I know this, you're gonna be like, Julia, I can't believe you're saying this. This is so obvious. Take a deep breath. Like, don't just blurt out. Like, I actually have when I get nervous, this is literally embarrassing. I giggle, and I'm an older person. Like, giggling is not super attractive on an older person, I don't think. But when I get really nervous, I giggle. Don't do that. Um, take a deep breath, and especially, and it also depends, of course. Recruiters are still, I'm getting a lot of recruiters who still want to talk on the phone and not like how we're doing over video chat. I'm like, okay, like, what are we in the 80s or something here? But, and even you can still get like a link and you sign up for like a Calendly and it's still just talking on the phone. So that gives you a little more freedom though to take that deep breath, be like, take a second, be like, oh, thank you for asking that question. Or, oh, I hadn't thought of someone asking me that question. Or just say something first that's not an immediate answer to their question. Um, Thank you for asking that question is a really good one when you're like stalling or you don't want to seem like you're just quickly responding and you're not just reacting. Taking that deep breath, those are some things you can definitely do, Ashley. Let's see, you had two more. What would you advise for someone who's applying less than 6 months to get through the first step of the process? So, yeah, definitely um, don't shout that out on your portfolio. Just don't put in the time. You put in everything else in your case study that you want to put in. Just don't say, like, I'm sure you've seen, like, especially, I don't know, Ashley, if you went to a boot camp, but it's like, my team, and it's like, you time, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. Um, so don't put that in. And then I feel like I could do a whole talk on this, but really talk about your transferable skills. Like, I don't know if you're a career transition, Ashley, or if you're like coming out of college, but talk about your soft, I hate using this word, soft skills. Those matter so much. Like I've learned, it's taken me 20 odd years to like learn. I do not like having someone tell me what to do. Or maybe it's just gotten as I've gotten older. Maybe James, you have something like this too, where you're an employee and someone's telling you something and you just don't agree. And it's like, I'm not a new kid on the block. So like I've learned that about myself.
I
Um,
can this is Ashley. I can respond to the
yeah.
first two. Um I actually am like in my 30s. Early 30s.
Okay. Yeah.
So I don't have
So
that
you're
much
not
experience with UX, and I also did not do a full boot camp. I did the Coursera certificate through Google and the American Dream Academy.
Oh
So,
yeah, okay, I have a few mentees who did that. Yep.
yep,
Okay. Okay, that's great. Yeah, so you're not in your early 20s. So that's good. Use those skills that you have that you got before now. So that's what you talk about. So like let's say I'm a recruiter. Ashley, tell me about a time when you, so this happens all the time, when you worked with someone and you didn't agree with what they wanted to do, how did you handle that? So these are the kind of questions. And even if someone asks you like a UX specific question, so like that one, you don't need UX experience. I'm sure you have plenty of examples you could use that. But let's say, trying to think of a very specific UX question. Okay, I don't know if I'd asked this. This other thing I didn't talk about in my talk, but UX, if you're applying to not a small company or not a startup, bigger companies, UX is very separate from research. Those are two totally separate roles. You aren't going to do those in one role unless you work at a startup or a really small company. Um, so they're not going to really ask you UX research questions, but I'm going to use that as an example. So, Ashley, give me an example of when you had to create a persona. So then you're like, oh shit, like in my Coursera course or something like that. So don't say that. Instead, like I don't know what you did in the past, but let's say you were in marketing or something. You could be like, oh, well, I was familiar with creating target audiences for specific tests I had to do for creating, social media campaigns or for creating. And so while that was not a UX persona, I still had to create a persona in the sense of knowing who my user was and what they wanted. Let's say you're a teacher. Ashley, tell me about a time you created a UX persona. Well, as a teacher, I'll say teaching fifth grade, I had to know what my students wanted to learn and tie that back to what the school wanted to teach them. Between those two things, I had to understand how to combine a business requirement with what the students wanted and give them the best learning experience possible. And so I created persona like interactions because I knew what my students wanted and what the business wanted. Is that helpful, Ashley?
very much so.
Yeah. Um, yes, I have seen people go straight into UX research without being any design background at all. Yeah. If you're really passionate about UX research, I do recommend, although I don't know, it's a little pricey, but Michelle does offer scholarships. And she has this thing called Curiosity Tank, Ask Like a Pro UX Research Specialization. She, I mean, she's an amazing instructor, and if you can do the really expensive one, which, like I said, she does offer scholarships. I don't know for the super expensive version, she has like 3 levels. You can work on a real project as well, so that gets you experience. I don't know if she offers scholarship for that version, but there's another one called the observer level where you get to do all the work but not the actual project. So if you're really passionate about that, um, I also recommend following Amy Santee. Um, I'll put it in the chat on LinkedIn. She's a coach, obviously. She's not cheap, and Amy does not believe in like scholarships and stuff, but she specializes in getting people from previous careers into UX research. So just following some of her insights can be helpful. She has a newsletter stuff as well. So that can be helpful. Coil, very good question. I'm just going to read it out loud. What do you do when the interviewer is openly not pleasant to talk to, with an expression like he doesn't want to be here from the way he's speaking and not sound methodologically? So how do you respond to that? I know I've actually been in this situation. So definitely be pleasant. Like, you don't have to respond like you're pissed off or like, why am I even having this conversation? Like, I've definitely had talks like that with recruiters and hiring managers. Not a pleasant experience, but always be very pleasant. Make sure you sound interested. I must admit, I'm learning a lot about myself as I get older. A few times I have been like, well, fine, why am I talking to you? Like, don't respond like that. Like, and it turns out like they were just really busy. Or one time it turned out they were not the person I was supposed to speak to, but I didn't know because I didn't get a list of who I was supposed to speak to. But they're like, this was just dropped on me 20 minutes ago. I had another meeting I had to cancel. And so they were like pissed at someone else. And so it had nothing to do with you. So just keep that in mind. Like, you don't know the circumstances of like why they don't want to be there, why they're being awful. And you don't have to bring it up, but can try and engage them as a person. So take this as an opportunity to know about what they're specifically doing. So you can be like, oh, you sound really busy. What are you working on right now? Or, what's the toughest part of your day? So don't try and just get your questions answered. Try and understand what they're going through from a human point of view. And like sort of connect with them at that level. So everyone likes to talk about themselves. So get them to talk about what they're frustrated about, and that'll help you actually get an insight into the culture. So I hope that's helpful. All right. Yep. Thank you for putting in the thing. So unfortunately, I can tell you, Amy charges $250 an hour. She's not cheap. But follow her on LinkedIn. She has a newsletter she sends out. I don't remember how often it is, but it has some stuff. Okay, Coyle. So I feel like that's a slightly different one where you feel judged by people who are like not competent. Definitely been there. So maybe saying someone asking you a question. Oh, yep. I was gonna just say like, yeah, toughest part of your day. So just take it away from like what you're interviewing for and just take that off the table and just try and get to know them as a person, as what their team is, because that can actually give you insight of the culture. Like, literally, I hear this so much, and I'm so lucky where I am that I don't have this, where it's like you're in so many meetings during the day, you don't have time to do your actual work. And so then you get to work, yay, after all those meetings to get your actual work done. So you're working like 60 hours a week in a salary where you don't get paid more because there's so many stupid meetings on your calendar. Maybe it's something like that. And so they'll be like, God, I have like 8 meetings today. When am I supposed to get all my work done? Then you have a clue, like, oh, do I really want to work there? Like, if this is such a meeting heavy culture. So, try and just think about them and not getting specific questions. Yes, I've been there before as well with those meetings. I am definitely push back on that a little bit. So what I do for those meetings, now I'm getting super specific and nothing to do with interviewing, is I block off my calendar with focus time. And then sometimes it depends on the company culture, but if they don't make you see exactly what you're doing, then it just looks like you have a block of meetings and it's just like busy. And you could be like, oh, I have meetings. When someone's like, oh, can't you change that meeting? My meeting's more important than yours. And I can be like, I have a meeting. But if it's specific and it shows like, like everything on the calendar, and some company cultures are like that, and they're like, we need to see exactly what you're doing, then I can just say, I'll either say focus time to get work done so people know like, hey, I'm actually trying to do my job. Once again, depends on company culture. I have worked at one place where it was just like not okay to do that. And so I must admit I lied a little bit. I just said meeting. And then I did like an hour block and I did meeting, 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 but I didn't say with who. Um, and so then they're like, oh, well, you're meeting with someone. So, um, and sometimes I have been asked, like, well, can't you change it? Like, that's the only time I can meet. And I can be like, really? Like, why is your time more important than my time? Um, so that's something also I'm really big on. Like, I'm not going to put up with that, honestly. And so just put it on your calendar when you need to work. Like, I'm a morning person, so I prefer not to have morning meetings. I love meeting in the afternoon. Um, I'm totally fine with that. My brain's fried. I'm fine. I'll do your stupid meetings at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 4. No problem. I'll leave that time open on my calendar. But I definitely had times where people are like, but we have to meet at like 9. Like everyone wants to meet at 9. And I'm like, why do we have to meet at 9? Like, give me a good reason. Especially when you have multiple time zones. Like I'm actually recently moved to the East Coast of the US because a lot of people I work with are in Europe and India. It was tough in Pacific time zone. Like I was getting up at like 5 a.m. to have meetings and stuff, and I was like, ugh, I'm actually a morning person, but I don't want to be chit chatting on the computer at 5 o'clock in the morning.
This is also
Yeah,
a reason why
it's
I like.
definitely full
Oh,
time.
sorry. Yeah, this is also a
Yeah, go
reason
ahead.
why I prefer to be a freelancer because I get to decide when and how I would like to have my meetings, including how often I have it. Because I burn out from just socializing with people very, very quickly. And I don't do my best job if I don't have the right kind of energy. So, yeah, if I'm working as a salaried employee, like, yeah, I think that I'd have less control over that. It would make me unhappy.
But now I'm much more like you. I prefer now freelancing or consulting or contracting. Like I don't think I can go back to like being a full-time employee. I just can't for those reasons is one of them. Yeah. And it's definitely a full-time job looking for a job or a project or a role. And it can be hard when you're like, I've got bills to pay. We all have been there, I'm sure. And it's frustrating when you're like not getting the responses you want. Sorry, I'm just checking the time. Oh, okay. Sometimes I talk so much and we can go like way over, so please just stop me. I see Quail is typing, so I'll let them know. But yeah, actually, anyone, feel free to unmute or type, whatever you prefer. Um, yeah, working on weekends, totally. Yeah, 100%. I have a like, I was just talking to someone, so I have a quote unquote side hustle. And I'm like, but my side hustle is practically like full time. Like, so I've got 2 jobs going on, but that's because during the week I've got my regular job and then I want to do my side hustle. And that's like evenings and weekends. So it's like having 2 jobs just to like build something or look for another job or whatever it may be. And it's frustrating that people you interview with maybe don't understand that and don't respect your time as much and ask for stupid things like design challenges. I've definitely heard some horror stories, like 8, 10 interviews. It can be really painful. Also, like you get all the way through the process, and then, like we heard in the beginning, like maybe negotiation, you don't get it, or that it's between you and like one other person, and then the other person gets it and you don't. And you're like, I just spent like 40 hours going through this process and now that time is gone. Um, Use it as a learning experience. I know it sounds cheesy and like, oh my God, why are you saying this? Like, what did you learn? One thing I do is, even though I have a full time job, I do try and interview or practice applying during every year. I try and do it. So I might apply to like a chunk of jobs like every quarter just to stay up to date. What's going on in the industry? Practice my interviewing skills. One example, I have a friend. She's been working. We met back in 2005, working at the same company. We both started on the same day. I left after a year, 2 years maybe. Um, I was just not super happy there, and there was no career growth. So she's still there, no career growth. They're laying off the entire team. They have already done 2 rounds of layoffs, and now it went from 30 to 9 people, and she's in the last group, and they're probably going to lay them off. She's terrified. She hasn't interviewed for a job in almost 20 years. She's had the same job, done the same thing because it's comfortable. Not everyone's career oriented, where I'm always looking for something to make me happy. I'm in constant pursuit of the perfect job, which I've learned doesn't exist. But anyway, um, so she's terrified because she hasn't had to interview in almost 20 years, and now she's, going to public speaking classes, going to improv classes just to like build up some of those skills, which is another good way to practice your interviewing skills. I definitely recommend. When I lived in San Francisco, I would go to this improv thing called BATS. BATS was an acronym. I'm blanking on what it was for. Bay Area something. You learn a lot of skills. Now they have some like online workshops where you can practice your public speaking skills. Um, Toastmasters is another place to practice, which I also know now they do online since the pandemic. So definitely practice those skills in outside the interview context, and you'll just get more comfortable than in the interview. And remember, the interview is just a selling process. You are a product selling yourself to a company on why they should buy you. That's all it is. Same with your application materials, they're marketing. Why? So don't show every little detail. Some old fashioned saying my mom used to say from a ranch, why buy the cow when the milk is free? So don't show everything. Got a little ranch background in me, farmer background. Um, so you don't need to show everything in your case studies. Leave them wanting more. I know it sounds cheesy, but just show enough to get people interested to call you to make that interview, and then the next interview, and then the next one, and then the job offer. So it's a lot of selling. On your online portfolio, I would say 3 case studies, but then have that. I know you're like, ugh, but have that one high quality case study, the first one. Then you can have 2. So, like, I have a mentee, she's just really been struggling. So, we have one high quality, like, awesome case study, and then we have 2, not even full case studies. She transitioning from traditional graphic design into like a UX role, and she's not really finding a fit. There's a whole lot of baggage there I won't go into. But what we decided to do is she likes doing things like um, presentation decks and stuff. So we actually have a case study that doesn't have to be this huge thing, but it showed her impact and like how she did this project. And it's just 1.5 pages if you printed it out, versus the one high quality case study could be like 5 pages. Um, so she did some shorter ones. So not every case study has to be this huge, involved, in-depth thing, too. So keep that in mind. So 3 for your online portfolio, 1 for a PDF, to show in a job should be plenty. I hope that's okay, Ashley. I know it can be hard, especially with the Google certificate. I know is difficult because they have the same projects for everybody. So go ahead and do some like passion projects. Um, I'm actually like, I know some people are like, oh, only show real work. If you show me why you did something, I don't care if it's real or for a company or a person. I want to know how you think about things. I want those critical thinking skills, um, which I'm sure you have a ton of, Ashley, from whatever you're transitioning from. You can think, that's what matters most. Sure, we all have deliverables and tools we need to learn. You'll pick those up. Oh, that's one thing I want to add. Oh, and I should stop. Sorry, I'm over time.
It's okay.
If a recruiter asks, like, can you use Figma? Let's just say hypothetically, you're like, oh crap, I've used it like once. Always say, I'm very familiar with the tool because you can learn it on the job. There's a million YouTube videos, there's a million tutorials out there. Never say, I don't know how to use a tool. Just say, I'm familiar, or I'm very familiar, or I've used it before. Even if you've only used it once, you'll pick it up. Don't shoot yourself in the foot. Um, okay, you're okay with that. So just, don't ever say, you can say, I don't know to a question, or that's a good question. I don't have a good answer at this time. I can follow up with you. but don't ever say, I don't know to a tool question. You can pick it up. All right, I think I should wrap it up. Thank you all for being here and asking such great questions. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll put it in the chat. And then it'll be in the slide deck, and I'll include some other resources as well.
Yeah, this has been a lively conversation. A lot of great questions being asked. For those of you that have joined halfway, just a reminder, we've recorded this session throughout the entire time. So if you want to follow us on YouTube, I'm just going to drop the link to our YouTube channel so that you guys have it. You could follow us right here. I'm just going to drop it. There you go. And also, one final thing, if you guys are also interested in participating in design sprints or any of our other webinars coming up, definitely subscribe to our calendar on Luma. You could find out when we're doing the next event. We'll send you emails to notify you in advance. Also, if you feel like donating to the Collective Studio, all donations kind of helps us to keep design sprints going. It also helps us to keep this community open and free and to have this kind of place for us to learn from each other. So if you definitely enjoyed this webinar and you enjoyed the Collective Studio in general and you want us to keep going, please consider donating to us or subscribing to us. So there are the links right there. And thank you guys. This has been a wonderful event. Hope to do more of this. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you, everyone. It was really great. Thanks for the awesome questions. Oh, thank you, Quill. I didn't know you'd been to multiple of my talks. Seem to be talking more. I don't know what happened, but whatever. Thank you for attending. I'm glad it's been helpful. Always ask me questions. I love answering and figuring things out, and I'm going to go figure out that project question. All right. Everyone have a good rest of your day. Thanks.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving weekend if you're in Canada, or just have a great weekend in general.
Oh, yay!
Yay!
Yes, that's great. So, happy Thanksgiving weekend if you're in Canada. Okay, have a great day,
Yep.
everyone.
Bye
Thanks.
bye.